parents were English teachers. I grew up with literature, going to the theatre, seeing different plays, reading a lot of books. Although it took me some time, decades I would say, to really acknowledge this to myself, I'm also a storyteller. Storytelling is really the centre of what I do as a choreographer. I guess it's not surprising in the end that I came to George Sand. I mean, I've made several pieces on writers or on works of primarily female writers of that time. Jane Eyre, for example, from Charlotte Bronte, Wuthering Heights from Emily Bronte. I choreographed a ballet on Queen Victoria. I think I'm drawn to the role of the woman in this 19th century period, and I love the music from this period. Recently I created a ballet called Clara, about Clara Schumann and her relationship with Robert Schumann and Johannes Brahms. There's something about the music of this time that really inspires me. So I think it's bringing those two things together, getting to know more and more about George Sand, and quite simply looking at images of her and this mix of femininity and masculinity, this duality, the need she had to create. But her life is incredibly rich, the relationships that she had with many people, not just Chopin. Words are the starting point for my creations. So I begin with the dramaturg I've worked with for a very long time, Edward Kemp. We write a kind of dance script. So we'll have the map for the piece laid out with the scenes and what we're trying to express in these scenes, how they lead from one to the other, but no movement. That will all just be like a kind of plan. And then before I go into the studio, for each character or group of characters, I write a list of words. And they could be sometimes images from books, so they can be quite poetic sometimes, or they can be just simply descriptors or verbs. And I'll go into the studio, and often with the dancers I will read them these words and then try to get them to give me more, so that they really also engage their imaginations in who is this character that we're trying to paint with our bodies. And then in the first rehearsals we will just create a vocabulary, a movement vocabulary that's prompted by those words. So if the word was sharp, we might use that as a starting point to create some movement. I will use point shoes. I often use point shoes, well, partly because I love what you can do in them, but more than that, there has to be a meaning, and I find them very expressive. They can portray a fragility and at the same time an enormous strength. And so George will certainly be on point, which is interesting because she famously dressed as a man, so it would also make sense in a way if she was not on point. But I think there's something about the steely use of the point shoe and the larger than life extension that it gives to the body, which matches her larger than life image. So the score will be brought together by Philip Feeney, who is a composer and arranger that I've worked with many times on ballets like Jane Eyre, The Cellist, Clara, and others. And he's so good at bringing in pieces of existing music, and he's able to take these existing works and sometimes orchestrate them, arrange them in such a way that is very musically faithful and respectful. And at the same time, he understands the needs of a ballet, the needs of a narrative. How do we need to tell a story? And so it will be working with Chopin. Well, the Paris Opera is one of those dreams that you never, or I didn't actually dream until I find myself sitting here in this dream. I grew from the Royal Ballet School, and the Royal Ballet Company was my dream. And the Paris Opera Ballet was the sort of the thing in the distance that I didn't really look at in connection with myself. It was a place of legend. It's quite surreal and a wonderful thing to be sitting in the studio right now. I'm very excited to work with the dancers.